All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, who has the woods of California as his serene backdrop. Today, we're going to talk about the US Open, some quick takeaways on college football and the official week one, and then week one of the NFL season. We'll have a look at Ravens Chiefs and then Packers Eagles, the first two primetime games on tap. But Drew, let's start off with your darling, the US Open. Chaos reigns, superstars dropping like flies. Where do you want to start with the US Open? What has been most fascinating to you?
I mean, the men's side of the draw is where all of the interest is right now. Djokovic and Alcaraz are out. We talked about in the preview that it didn't make sense that those were the top two choices. And ultimately, the fact that they're both out of it now is pretty noteworthy for anyone who has, took swings on Sinner. Nice job. Like he probably has like 60% chance to win this title. And if you bet into 3-1 or any kind of price around thereabouts, you're feeling pretty good. The more exciting news is for those of us who are into 100-1 or greater for Mr. Grigor Dimitrov. He has life. He's going to have to probably go through, he's going to have to do it himself. He's going to have to get by the winner of this Tiafoe Popyrin match, which I'm presuming is going to be Tiafoe, and then, take on Alexander Zverev, likely, who's right now playing the best tennis of anyone in Q3. But still a long way to go, and anything can happen. And the fact that we have a 100-1 shot that has a realistic chance is freaking awesome. And absolutely loved watching Dimitrov play today. Double down, bet him against Rublev because I had made him 58% chance to win, so I was very happy with that result. And ultimately, like, Sinner is not the perfect, he's not the unbeatable monster that he was through lots of the early part of the season based on all the fatigue. And I think if there's one takeaway from what's going on the men's side, it surely is Olympic fatigue. The fact that Alcaraz and Djokovic both were, number one, not playing very good tennis, and then number two, got upset in such, astonishing fashion, I think lends to some of the fatigue that they were carrying into the event from the, grass, clay, now hard. It's tough to adapt and tough to have your sharpest game at that, in with that kind of a schedule. And surely that definitely played into, why their, quality of performances were so suspect. So not to take away from the, the upset of, and how well the challengers have been playing just in general, but I definitely would kind of lean into that being the reason why you had such kind of lackluster performances from the top of the board here. And wish I had thought of that more sincerely before the tournament started.
Yeah, I mean, Alcaraz in particular going down, one of the rare in history $1 shots to get beat at a Grand Slam. When you take the vig out, the fair price for him to go down was like pretty close to like 100-1, and for him to go down in straight sets, that's kind of a weird pricing exercise, because if a $1 shot is going to get beaten, it usually means that something is like violently wrong, which would, increase the scope that they would lose in straight sets more than just kind of the normal distribution of a player getting beaten, I guess, would entail. But yeah, I mean, to lose in straight sets had to be like north of 500-1 fair, I would have thought. But he is done. Djokovic is done. Let's get into the women's side, and then we'll loop back to the men's side. Arina Sabalenka, who is, I believe, still playing as we speak, if she hasn't wrapped up against Mertens. She's making a little bit of hard work at the second set when I last checked in, but she is the favorite to win at plus 150 now. Yeah. Eager plus 225, and then we have a massive drop off to Jessica Gula and Carolina Mukova. Start with Mukova, who plays Paolini Monday. Mukova minus 150 favorite. What do you think of her chances to win that, and then also to make a bit of a run of it, because she's obviously got massive upside?
Oh yeah, no. She should win this comfortably, and then the upside is absolutely there. Paolini, I don't want to say that her accomplishments this year have been in any way undeserved. But Mukova is, and the level in particular we saw in that match against Osaka, where she took her, really just like a pretty incredible level that Mukova produced in that match. If she can produce that level against Paolini in the quarterfinal, or, really just at any point here this second week of the tournament, if she can play that well, then she is the player to beat in this tournament. And I still look at like the way that the draw is distributed now. It was a little bit of a unbalanced draw when we started, where Sabalenka had the softer half and the softest quarter, and the most likely path to the final. It's got even more pronounced now, where the first quarter, particularly on the women's side, with Diana Schneider playing unbelievable tennis, Pegula still being a very realistic contender, Iga is going to have her work cut out for her to get to the final of this tournament. And I think Mukova in particular, if you think back to French Open final 2 years ago, where Mukova was the better player but lost to Iga, I think getting a little bit of just a little karmic revenge in beating Iga this year would not shock me at all. Mukova is playing amazing tennis, and really just like she's just a flat out athlete. Like her movement on the court is unbelievable, and her ability to put pressure on her opponents, particularly on serve, is kind of her distinguishing characteristic. So, she's just as live to break Iga on any given serve opportunity as anyone else in this draw, and I think that could make this a little bit more interesting. Otherwise, Sabalenka, I think, absolutely cruises on the bottom half. Coco Gauff goes out today. That was not expected, but it was not shocking, especially considering that she was playing even better when Emma Navarro got her last time. So kind of not surprised that she got her again. But, there's no one in Q3 that's spooky at all from the standpoint of stopping Sabalenka from getting to the final. And I think ultimately she could probably get there with with little, if any, damage.
Okay, let's jump to the men's side, where Sinner now plus 125. Clear favorite, Sasha Zverev 3-1. Medvedev stuck on Sinner's side of the draws plus 375, and then drop off to Taylor Fritz at 12-1. Your man Dimitrov, who you spoke about him, I think you might have even spoken about him when he was north of 100-1. He is now 16-1. Do you think that perhaps Zverev, despite melting in big situations whenever he gets the opportunity to do so, is he now the guy who is most likely to challenge Sinner just by virtue of the draw?
I think he's the most likely to choke at some point, if that makes sense. He should ultimately be the best player on the bottom half, but in a really big moment against a player who's performing well in a given opportunity, he could absolutely fumble the bag. And I think ultimately, Sinner does not. Like the Sinner Zverev, as far as a matchup in a final, does not scare me at all if I'm holding Sinner tickets. And I think ultimately Zverev is sort of his high watermark is beating anyone who's not a clear top 5 player. And Sinner with his quality, especially because he's taken no damage so far, like he is literally coasting. I think he would be the clear choice for me if that ultimately is your final. And just in general, Zverev had a 70% Carlos Alcaraz on the ropes in the French Open final and couldn't get it done. So, if he ultimately does, kind of change his fortune, it's going to be without me involved.
Okay, that's reasonable. Monday's slate, the headliner in a way is Sinner, who is a minus 650 favorite over Tommy Paul. Other matches of note, Medvedev is a minus 800 favorite against Nuno Borges. Alex de Minaur minus 350 against Jordan Thompson. And Jack Draper is minus 275 to progress as well. Anything stand out on the card to you?
I definitely think that Borges is a dynamite player on this surface. He's having a little bit of a breakout moment right now. He's going to push Medvedev, no question about it. Like, I don't think Medvedev is on upset alert there, but give me the plus games, give me the plus sets for Borges. He's a player that absolutely could make Medvedev's life miserable. And then on the bottom half of the draw, I think de Minaur comes through relatively cleanly. I think Jack Draper, on the other hand, could be in for a little bit of a test here. Draper, for what it's worth, has the tools to kind of be a semifinalist here, and I don't think we should be shocked, but he really has not been tested, and this is the first kind of opportunity for him to catch a little bit of damage. And if he can't, kind of get through that cleanly, then he ultimately could be on upset alert. So Borges is kind of the hot player for me as far as getting involved in a spread bet here. I think that the center match price is correct. I think the Medvedev price is not, but I would expect Medvedev comes through here. It could be a 5-setter, but Borges plus the games is my favorite play of the day.
Okay. Well, this is good, Drew. This is a men's Grand Slam. There's actually suspense. We've got,
There
and
is.
it's Sinner goes down to Tommy Paul, which, Sinner's not minus 2,500. Yeah, Tommy Paul's plus 400. So by market, 20% chance. You strip that out, like a 17, 18% chance or whatever, but that's a real chance. It happens all the time. And if that happens, then yeah, we could be looking at like Medvedev, Dimitrov type finals, which
That
would
would be
be
so great.
insane.
That would be so great.
Yeah. And well, the people don't want like planet Earth doesn't want Sinner Zverev. I don't think. I think planet Earth wants Medvedev against just not Zverev. But
I guess
anyway,
let's not mince any words. If it's Sinner Zverev, we are all Team Sinner. Like
yes,
you can
yeah, no
you
question.
can be a little bent out of shape about the process with the with the steroid positive test that ultimately was not awarded any penalty, but it's not fair to hold those two side by side in terms of who should we be rooting for.
Oh no, it'd be like Tom Brady after the Deflategate going up against the Sean Watson. Like it's not. Yeah,
Yes, that's a fair comp.
Team Brady, Team Sinner. All right, let's jump ahead to college football. I don't think any massive results per se. Largely chalky. Georgia dominating Clemson, perhaps the most noteworthy result outside of like Texas A&M losing to Notre Dame. But I mean, that wasn't a massive surprise. Notre Dame were only a field goal underdog. Oregon didn't look great. Miami ran away from Florida 41-17. To me, that was maybe the most notable result just because of the ripples into the Heisman market with Cam Ward kind of announcing himself as a top tier 1 type of candidate after being more like tier 2 coming into the season. He goes from 14-1 into plus 950 at MGM. What were your big takeaways out of the weekend?
Yeah, well, it was a great weekend for anyone who is especially good at originating college football. Holy smokes. The smart people that I talk to that originate, destroyed this week. And I think that that is a good note, which is that if you have sort of a player level ability to synthesize a price for a college football team, and in current day and age where their transfer portal is dictating everything, you are going to be very, very far ahead of market in terms of coming up with priors for teams. And I think that was very much on display with what we saw in terms of results. And none of this was fluky stuff like the heavily steamed stuff that came from the originators that I respect the most was almost like never really in doubt. So hat tip to Georgia for suspending their most important running back and then still having an unbelievable display through the air against Clemson. That was pretty impressive. And I think Georgia at full strength is probably the team to beat in college football until we hear something more impressive from Ohio State, I suppose. But Georgia absolutely deserves to be number one. And I think downgrading Texas A&M is fair. Downgrading Florida absolutely has to happen. And in fact, if I was Billy Napier, I would maybe not throw away those boxes in your office just in case, because it doesn't feel like Florida is happy with the state of the program. So, well done by Miami. Well done. And Miami may ultimately actually have an inside track to take the ACC spot in the top 4. I would not be shocked at all if they're ultimately the rep there. But the SEC looks amazing, as we thought it was going to. The Big Ten has some phenomenal defenses, as we knew they did. And then outside of that, I think it basically, kind of broke the way we were expecting. And I think I don't want to say that there was a little bit like less of there's every college football game is important because it's such a short season. But I didn't really feel like any of the results had sort of the weight of their season's over, other than Florida.
Yep. No, that sounds reasonable. Just I would say to not go overboard in reading too much into week 1 of the college season, just given how obviously you get attached to your first impression of a team. The game that I always come back to thinking about, is going to apply to any sport, but specifically with football, is a few years ago when Aaron Rodgers lost 38-3 to the Saints in week one, and then won MVP without breaking a sweat after that. He threw 3 picks in week one. Think back, like first game that Kevin Durant played with the Warriors. I think the Warriors lost at home by 30 to the Spurs. Like weird stuff happens, and with how dependent college, or just how variable college performance is based on opponents, in terms of just the kind of variance in the spread. It's not like the NFL where obviously you kind of range from like max a 17-point favorite down, whereas, in college you can put up, 5 touchdowns and a half against a garbage opponent. And then it's hard to extrapolate that with confidence after 1 week to how that kind of performance is going to hold up against an elite team. So off of that, like with the Heisman in particular, there is a lot of momentum behind Cam Ward, who, to be fair, did play a real opponent, at least relative to what's going to be coming up for him next. But like overreacting to what Jackson Dart did, who may well be in the conversation by the end, but it's 1 week and it's difficult to read too much into it. The guy in that market I'm most interested in is Drew Aller, who is 25-1. He was 45-1 going into last week. If Penn State win the Big Ten, and I think they're like plus 450 to do so, and Aller, who has, last season had a stellar touchdown interception ratio. He's not going to have like the video game kind of Jaden Daniels type numbers, but he'd be right in the mix if they won the Big Ten, and he kind of keeps that TD int ratio crisp. But any thoughts for you on the Heisman front?
No, I love that shout, because as you look across the Big Ten, you know what you don't see, Jay? Offense.
Yeah.
There's no good offenses. And if Penn State ultimately can produce an SEC type of quality offensively, then expecting them to be able to get a Heisman candidate at least to the ceremony, if not the winner, is I think realistic. So that's a great shout. And honestly, like if you watch him play college football, the guy is a monster. He is like just physically imposing, and I have yet to run across a broadcaster that can help themselves from comparing him to Josh Allen.
Yeah, no, for sure. There is something about Cam Ward though, which is pretty special, and I think just that always, particularly now where like Mahomes has obviously become the pinnacle for quarterbacks, and anyone who has that kind of Mahomes gene for extending plays and the way that Caleb Williams does as well, I think that just kind of it resonates to a certain outlier level. And I think that, what Cam Ward was doing, that is the type of stuff that is going to resonate the most. But let's see, he's still got a long way to go. In good position to win the ACC, but still got to do that, and still got to he's going to have to put up the video game numbers and go that route, as opposed to, the ultimate touchdown interception ratio. He's already got 1 pick on the board, but he could definitely do it via the Daniels method. All right, before we get to Ravens Chiefs, week 1 is here, and the season begins with NFL kickoff on Thursday, September 5th, as the Ravens face the Chiefs on NBC and Peacock. The following night, it's Packers v. Eagles in Brazil, exclusively on Peacock. All right, first game of the season, Drew. Ravens Chiefs. Chiefs are 3-point favorites. It opened a little bit lower than this, then got up a little bit higher than this, and now is settled at 3, which I think seems reasonable. 46.5 is the total. Thursday, the opener. What say you on this one? Is 3 too many or just right?
3 is a little short, but not short enough to make a bet on. If you have been listening to us opine about this game for all of the preseason, I think hopefully you're with me holding a 2.5. I think ultimately the fact that this was under 3 was noteworthy for a couple reasons. And, I think the Chiefs really are not necessarily being priced to their true talent as we head into the season. There's a little bit of a discount on them, which I know sounds absurd, because like, how could there ever be a discount on a Mahomes-led Chiefs team? But this team was 6-point favorites against the Lions heading into last year's season opener on Banner Night, and that team had way more questions. There was the extended holdout for Chris Jones. There was the hyperextended knee and bone bruise for Travis Kelce. Those are the second and third most important players for this Chief team, and these guys are now fully healthy and are going to be very, very impactful for this opening game against the Ravens. Meanwhile, the Ravens have all of the questions heading into this contest. I absolutely am concerned about the quality of the offensive line, as you have a huge turnover at that positional group, and I'll turn over as far as coaching with the depth of their offensive line coach this preseason. So a lot about the Ravens that I think is not being currently digested by market. You have just in general, huge step back in terms of how they're going to be able to generate a pass rush. They have not solved any of the questions circling around their skill position group, as you have Mark Andrews coming off of the car accident. You have Zay Flowers as your wide receiver one. This is not a scary group that I think is going to be able to keep up with the Chiefs if the Chiefs are running on all cylinders. And I guess the other kind of key thing is the Chiefs tend to take the first portion of the regular season and maybe really a lot of the regular season as preseason and kind of tend to focus and bring their best for the postseason. However, it is noteworthy that they played a lot of their starters in this preseason and hitting the ground running, and the purpose by which they seem to be outwardly communicating to all of us that they want to have a less stressful and a cleaner offensive start to their season this year, I think is worth paying attention to. These sort of things matter, and I think the Chiefs having a relatively clean win against the Ravens team that has all of the questions on their side of the docket is my expectation. So I laid the points with the Chiefs. I don't hate laying 3 at a really discounted price, and I think ultimately the fair should be just a little bit outside of 3. As far as the total goes, 46.5 is too high by my numbers. Not capturing any key if I play it under on this one, so I'm going to pass. But Chiefs for me on Thursday night.
Okay. Yeah, look, if I was forced to back a side, it would be Kansas City. I think that the question marks with Baltimore, there's a lot of just kind of, if you want to believe in Baltimore, there has to be a lot of institutional trust that that organization, which just kind of has produced offensive linemen and has salvaged offensive line situations, is going to do it again, because on paper, like 60% of the offensive line is very uncertain. Also, like, they don't have edge rushers, and they didn't really have edge rushers last year, but they had Jadeveon Clowney, who had a really good season, and they relied on Mike McDonald's simulated pressures to create a pass rush in a lot of ways, because they don't have a Micah Parsons, a Myles Garrett, a TJ Watt, etc. at edge, so they had to do it with somewhat smoke and mirrors. And now it's not like they're going to forget everything that was in the Mike McDonald system, but with him gone, that's a bit of a concern. It's just weird that they didn't add anything at wide receiver. They're just going to roll back like the Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar at 2-3 kind of situation. And I think with the Chiefs, and it's a little bit fraught with peril, but I think for a team that now has won 3 Super Bowls, went to a 4th Super Bowl, went to another AFC title game, been to the AFC title game every season of Mahomes' career, and like, it just depends on projecting, like, how seriously are they going to take a regular season. I think after last year, which, even though they won the Super Bowl, last year was such a kind of painful, frustrating slog all season on offense, where it felt like Mahomes kind of just didn't let go of the rope because he was still playing at an amazing level. But think about the temper tantrum that he threw after the Bills game, or just how putrid the offense looked on Christmas at home to the Raiders, losing that, getting embarrassed. I think that now that he has real proper weapons and toys, and we're not going to see Hollywood Brown, but we will see Xavier Worthy there. I think that Kingsley Suamataia at left tackle, who looked really good in preseason, he may even be an upgrade on what they had there last year. And I just think that with Rashee Rice heading into year 2, kind of turn the corner in the last third of last season, I think that Kelce is going to be better than he was last year, just because he was constantly banged up last year. And even if he is on a reduced count, I just think this offense is going to be the best offense in the league. I think it's going to be the type of season where it's week 10 and Mahomes is already like minus 125 to win MVP. I think that they're just going to go scorched earth on offense. We'll see on defense. like L'Jarius Sneed going, that ripple effect to the rest of the defense will be interesting. A lot more on Trent McDuffie's plate, even though, he's been awesome as a number 2. Now he has to really step up. But still, like, it's Spags. They still have a ton of talent. I think this is the best team in the league. I think that Mahomes is a bet for MVP. If I had to make one Super Bowl bet, it would probably be just Kansas City at plus 600. And I think that it probably starts on Thursday night.
Yeah, that's all fair. What else do they have left now to prove with 3 Super Bowls and 3, just clear dominant seasons other than chasing immortality? And this is a winning opportunity for them against a Ravens team that at full strength last year was clearly favored in that AFC title game. And granted, it was in Baltimore, but the line told you that the Ravens were a better team. And the way they matched up then was better than the way they match up now. And not exactly scared of this Ravens rushing attack against the weakness of the Chiefs defense in terms of run stop, and not exactly scared of the Chiefs secondary up against this Ravens team that only has one wideout who's borderline wide receiver 1. So I think ultimately the Chiefs get a comfortable win here. If they can beat the Bengals with extra rest week 2, I think we really are looking at a deep run for this Chiefs team, potentially chasing some immortality.
Yep. And just going back to what I was saying earlier about projecting incentives and motivation in the regular season, like for the NFL, that is a lot less relevant than it is for the NBA, for example, where there's just like, it's simple, like there's 17 games instead of 82. And if you lose a game, it really hurts your chances of winning the Super Bowl in terms of seeding and the fact that there's only one bye to get. Whereas if I think that, like the Nuggets this year, they might just coast a bit because they'll prioritize health, and Jokic has nothing to prove in the regular season, and they might just be content being a 50-32, 3 or 4 seed. It doesn't really work like that with football. And the Chiefs, like, I don't think they're really just going to coast, particularly after they had so many growing pains last year on offense. Like, I think they're going to want to really rev it up. And I think Mahomes is just going to want to, kind of for lack of a better phrasing, just kind of have fun again on offense and actually throw the ball deep and have guys catch the ball, which was sorely lacking last season. So yeah, I think that the Chiefs, I think they are kind of tier 1 by themselves of all teams when you factor in the age concerns about the 49ers and just the contractual stuff, and the defense didn't look great last year and all that. I think the Chiefs are the clear standout team, and I think they will show us all that on Thursday night. All right. Fantasy football season just got $1 million better. Create or join a private Yahoo Fantasy League and enter the $1 million NBC sweepstakes, plus earn extra entries to win when players on your fantasy roster score a touchdown during an opening weekend game on NBC or Peacock. Download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCsports.com/fantasymillion to learn more.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay. Sweating out this Phillies Braves game, Drew. It's 2-2 in the ninth. I don't know why the Braves keep hanging around in these games. They've got like 3 good players left, and just every game comes down to the ninth, and they tend to win. But anyway, need it for my beloved Mets. Let's go to Packers Eagles. The Eagles, Drew, are 3-point favorites. The total is 48.5. This line has moved a lot. It opened. It was in the 1.5 range for a time, and then recently has really steamed in the Eagles' direction. There's been a lot of steam just in general on the Eagles in terms of their like make the playoff price, the division where they opened at plus money, and now some spots like minus 170. There's a lot of hype behind the Eagles, and I think that a lot of it is driven by um, what they showed in preseason in terms of their creativity with Kellen Moore and using a lot more motion and all of that kind of stuff. Do you think this line has gone too far for the Eagles to be a 3-point favorite on a neutral field?
No, I think 3 is right. I'm in.
Okay.
I played the Eagles at 2.5. I'm very much kind of part of the the overall market buy on this Eagles team. I don't think that what you're noting of their preseason is hugely impactful as far as why people believe in this team. I think the reasons people believe in this team are pretty clearly twofold. One, the roster is the best, if not the best, number one, top 3 in football from 1 to 53. They really just don't have many holes. The investments they made in the offseason to try to shore up the defensive side of the ball, particularly the coverage unit, is likely to work. They have good players there now, and in general, the scheme shift, may take couple weeks until it gets up to full speed. But both offensive and defensive scheme, should be hugely improved from what we saw towards the end of last year when they were collapsing. And I think, just the sum of the parts in terms of a roster makes this team look very, very formidable. And then you marry that with how weak their schedule is, and seeing the Eagles as your top team, your 1 seed in the NFC is not hard if you are rating them anywhere close to the top of the NFC teams in terms of power rating. So, I think ultimately it's mostly just kind of marrying the quality of the roster with how weak the schedule is, that is kind of driving a lot of this enthusiasm. Now, I will say, if there is one team in the NFL that I think has the highest likelihood of not equaling the sum of the parts, it's probably Philadelphia. And I'm not necessarily a long-term buyer in Kellen Moore. I'm not really expecting Vic Fangio to, turn this defense around on a dime. I like them again, their matchups in every way against Green Bay, but I still have huge questions about Philadelphia being anywhere close to the class of the NFC, to where I wouldn't want to take them on, particularly in the in the playoffs. So, ultimately, I'm not into Eagles NFC title. I'm not into Eagles Super Bowl. I think happy to be against them in both of those markets, but in this particular matchup at full strength against a Packers team that has had kind of a sloppy preseason, I think is perfectly reasonable. And the Packers were a second half team last year that caught fire at the right time. They were playing their best football at the time you want to be playing it, and they probably should have beaten the Niners and gone to the NFC title game. But it still is a very young team. It still is a defense that has huge problems and questions. And I don't know that going up against this Eagles team is a very delightful way for them to start their campaign. And just in general, I think the Eagles are the right side here. But, there's better bets on the board than playing the 3 now. So if you don't already have an Eagles, under the 3 in pocket, I would probably stay away.
Yep, that's reasonable. I think with the Eagles, the questions, and there are questions around the margins where like Devin White, I think he's kind of proven that he's just not that great. And I don't know why they really went after him, but it seems like he's going to be a key part of that linebacking core. Like they're heavily reliant on guys at corner, like Quinion Mitchell, who we've never seen him, though we think that he's going to be good. Isaiah Rodgers, who hasn't played in a year. Obviously, Kelsey gone at center, and what does the offense look like with Jalen Hurts being a bit more in command of things? And I think that really it's strange because like this team has been, for the most part, the principal characters have been the same for the past 2 years, and it should be a fairly known commodity. But just with how bizarre last season was, with the specific flaws that Hertz showed, I think this team is a bit more high variance than they normally would when you just look at the roster continuity. And I think that it largely boils down to Hertz. Like if Hertz is going to play at the level that he did pretty much all throughout 2022 and for large stretches of 2023, then this should be like a 12-5 win team and a top 2 seed. If he is the guy who seemed like he just had no answer whatsoever for the blitz, and whether that's kind of an indictment on him or whether it was an indictment on the scheme, which seemed very lacking last season, we'll probably find out this season. But I mean, it's also like, to your point, like Kellen Moore, it's not like this is Ben Johnson coming in to fix the Eagles, right? It's like it's Kellen Moore. Kind of seeing the Kellen Moore experience was what the Eagles had before, just so unbelievably bad that just getting to a baseline of competence, is that going to lift them? Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I'm largely with you. I think that they have an incredibly high floor. I'm not sure what the ceiling is, with the questions in the secondary and the kind of questions about Hertz. And also, like, was Hertz took some hits last year where it felt like the way he was limping on his knee that his season was just going to be over. And he just kept on going out there. And it's hard to judge because he's never been like the fastest guy, even though we think of him as a running quarterback. Like, he's very much like power. It's like a power back, not like there's 100%. No real like shiftiness. And so it's kind of hard to judge like how exactly hurt is your knee. But yeah, overall it adds up to something that feels just a little bit off and a little bit underwhelming, but should have a fairly high floor just because of the overall talent on the roster.
Yeah, huge turnover in leadership in that locker room. No Kelsey, no Cox. Like that, if somebody doesn't step into that void and really be the vocal leader of this team when going gets tough, this could all fall apart. But I personally look at, and you said it, like I would hang a lot of the lack of success for particularly the Eagles offense last year on injury swirling around Hurts in particular. And if he has a healthy season, then my expectations are more of 2022, less of what we saw in November, December 2023. But that said, this schedule is soft as can be to start. It has some interesting wrinkles and challenges in the middle, and then it is soft down the stretch. So I think we are going to get our chance to see them tested in the months of late October, November, and if they ultimately stabilize, win those, and win some of those games, and the leadership emerges, then this is a team that is forced to be reckoned with. If it doesn't go well, though, these guys quitting on Nick Sirianni and him getting fired, and this all kind of falling apart at the seams and not equaling the sum of the parts is 100% in the reality in terms of possible outcomes.
Yeah. We haven't really mentioned the Green Bay Packers, who are the other team in this game. I think that when we talk about the variance of the Eagles, like the Packers, there are worlds where the Packers are like a 14-3 juggernaut 1 seed. And then I think there are worlds where, Hafley comes in and the defense still just isn't that great. And Jordan Love has his hero ball moments go wrong and none of the kind of 4 wide receivers take a leap, and Christian Watson's dealing with his hamstring again. And the young offensive line doesn't take a step forward. And this is like an 8-9 team that misses the playoffs. Huge range of outcomes. Think that the variance with them comes with just how real was Jordan Love last season. I think probably pretty real in that he finished the season 5th in EPA per play, and the first half of the year didn't really seem to know what he was doing and still was able to close that well. They completely eviscerated the Cowboys. And then I think accorded themselves well against the Niners despite the second half semi-meltdown. But what do you think of this team's defense in particular? If we think that the offense is a little bit more of a well-known commodity with LaFleur and Love, and they just have so many. It's tough to call them dart throws because we've seen Wicks, Watson, Dobbs, Reed all before, but the thought is that like they're not all going to fail, and that they should have enough there. The O-line was solid last year. I think the offense has a reasonably high floor. It's just whether Love can take a MVP type step. By the way, there are some books where Jordan Love is the second favorite to win MVP, which is quite a world that we're living in. And he's got the upside to win it. I don't think I'd put him as the second favorite, but he is on the short list. But what do you think of the defense, where new defensive coordinator? Do you think that the previous regime was just so bad that just anyone coming in kind of creates the upside where this could be an average to above average unit?
I have a tough time evaluating the quality of the players on this defense. They've invested a lot of draft capital and not gotten the returns expected. And you can either hang that around the neck of the previous regime in terms of not developing that talent and not using them appropriately, or you can say that their evaluations were no good and they took these guys too early and they're just not a very talented unit. I lean latter right now. I think there are, particularly with this coverage unit, huge question marks. And the pass rush looks to me to be a little bit lukewarm. I think Rashawn Gary certainly does stand out if he has a healthy year, but not to the degree that he's going to be winning you matchups against elite offensive lines like the Eagles have this week. So I think the defense, to me, grades as a unit overall. That's going to look good against the weaker offenses that they face, particularly the weaker offensive lines they face. But if they finish above 16th in DVOA, I'll be surprised.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is fair. I think a lot of it comes down to just like Rashawn Gary last year was good, but he wasn't the world beater that it looked like he was on track to be before he tore his ACL a couple of years ago. And if he now, I mean, he's still very young. He's he's not super young. He's 26 years old, so relatively young, and a year removed off the ACL. Their safety situation was a mess last year. They bring in Xavier McKinney to shore that up. Jair Alexander just didn't play that much last year, and just with more health from him, like there are worlds where, and just like we don't know anything about Hafley really and what his defense is going to look like. Like there are the bones of a defense here. Like if the Packers finish as the number 10 defense, I don't think it would shock the world. It's just that's not the likeliest outcome, but they do have youth. They do have guys in, Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary and Jair Alexander, who in theory can be A-graders. I think there are worlds where they have like the number 10, 11 defense and the top 3 offense. And we're talking about this team as the favorite to win the NFC at some point this year. It's just probably have to see a little bit more to be certain of that clearly. Before we get out of here, the total 48.5. What do you think of that?
I don't have a ton of understanding of the conditions at the field, and where there's this tiny little bit of elevation, and for those reasons, I stayed away. But my fare would have been 49.
Okay, fair. Yeah, it looks like it will be a shootout exclusive to Peacock. All right, we are done for now. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we will see you later this week.